Well, hello everybody out there in Facebook world. Let me change my camera angle here a little bit. Try to get a little better lighting. Apologize, I'm a little out of sorts here today. The computer is not playing nice. Glad that you have tuned in for us to hang out with us for lunch with Crossroads. Let me see who's out there. Got Shannon Sullivan. Let me see. Sherry Spencer, Stephanie Nall is out there. It's good to see you guys. Hope you are having a great day today. Today is February 23rd, 2017, and today is episode 44 of Lunch with Crossroads, a weekly time where we get together and we chat about current events from a Christian worldview. We are broadcasting live today from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, where it is a beautiful 50-something degrees outside. I'm told that we're going to hit a high of 72, and I hope that wherever you're at, you're having a beautiful spring day. Hey, listen, before I get too much further, I'm trying some new things today, technologically that maybe you don't know about there, but can you guys let me know what you're hearing? Are you hearing clean audio where you're at? Just give me a thumbs up if you're getting clean audio. There we see. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that response. Boy, lag time's tough today. So, sounds good there. Getting a higher pitched rob and lag on the lips. I'm sorry, Steph. Maybe you need a reboot. Lag on the lips. Okay, well, anyway, let us know what you're having for lunch today. I hope you're having something yummy. And if you haven't made up your mind yet, I will share with you. Today is National Toast Day. I found that on the web. What's your favorite thing to spread on toast? My kids like Nutella. I'm not a great big fan of the Nutella. This morning I had toast for breakfast, not because I knew it was National Toast Day, but just worked out that way. And so it is National Toast Day. I had cheese toast for breakfast, but I'm a big fan of cinnamon toast here. Tommy Hodges got lag as well. Sorry, guys. I don't know that there's anything I can do about the lag for right now. Probably has something to do with something I'm doing on my back end. Mason has a piece of toast every day. So if you got lag, just listen. You don't have to watch me. Except for in a second, I'm going to show you something. I want you to see it. Anyway, I hope you're having great lunch. I don't know what I'm having for lunch yet today. I'm thinking about maybe some Woohoos. We'll see. I'm kind of on a Woohoos Greek food kick lately because I'm really loving it. Before we jump in too much further, happy birthday wishes to my buddy Matt Black out there. Matt's a great worship leader. Love Matt and Joanna. Earlier this week, happy birthday to my mother-in-law, Cindy Jackson, the lovely Miss Sarah Pate. And then, of course, this weekend coming up, we've got Debbie Sullivan, Curtis Duvall, Jason Phelps, Eric Lawshe, and Aaron Smith having birthdays this weekend. Well, hey, listen, in the news this week, I'm still boycotting political news because I'm kind of up to here with it. I'm done with it. Boy, the lag is really bad. I can see it. So, no politics in the news this week because I just don't want to talk about it. So, that's my show. But I will say this, Dateline, Indiana, winning lottery tickets sold last night, which begs the question, if you won the lottery, how much money would you give to Crossroads Baptist Church, right? I think it should be like the reverse tithe, 90% to the church. You learn to live on 10%. I don't know. You work that out. Let me know how much money you would give to your church. Hi, Amy Powers. Hello there, Lewis O'Brien. Glad that you're tuned in there, wherever you're at. Maybe you're at the... Lewis, are you at the fire station or are you off today? Apologize. I'll try to keep my head still, too. I realize I got some light issues behind me. But anyway, Wednesday's Powerball drawing was worth an estimated $435 million. One winning ticket was sold in Lafayette, Indiana, which is a couple hundred miles north of where we are, at a gas station. Did you know that the odds of winning any Powerball lottery are approximately 292.2 million to 1? That's not very good. Glad you're home today, Lewis. In other words, if you bought one lottery ticket each week, you could expect to win one lottery every 672,000 years or so. Let that sink in. Okay. Ken Lee says he lost $20 on a slot machine in Germany 15 years ago and refused to play any kind of lottery or gambling since. So he's not going to win the lottery. Yeah, you can't win if you don't play. That's what they say back on their commercials, isn't it? Hold on just a second. That lighting's killing me. Boy, we're a ghetto show today. I'm sorry. You've grown to expect a higher production quality. I know. Anyway, the lottery. What if I could tell you that you could have $30,000, and to have $30,000, all you had to do was not play the lottery? Would you take the 30 grand? Because here's the deal. Let's say the average American spends $150 each year on lottery tickets, or the average lottery player. If you were to spend $150 a year on lottery tickets and you were to put it in some kind of investment that would accrue 8% of interest compounded annually, at the end of 40 years, the yearly investment of $150 would be worth, yes, 38 grand. $38,000, okay? Okay, I've got to address a comment for a second. Amy Powers, your mom, the pastor's wife, is the penny slot queen. Not even sure what to say about that. Miss Sandy, I'm so disappointed in you. This is so out of character for you. There's a lecture here involved somewhere, but I wouldn't deign to chastise you being the one of wisdom that you are. All right. So for my second, she loves the slot machines, according to her daughter. She has been called out on social media. My second news thing, I think this is why we got the lag. I've got a video clip today, so I'm trying to be high tech. Let's see how this works. All right, turn in. I want you to see this. This is reporting live on our second news clip, and it's going to lead into our conversation today. And I can't tell if it's playing.
Township woman rescued after being unable to move from her chair for over a year. Barbara Foster was taken to the University of Toledo Medical Center. No update on her condition at this time. But how could this happen? Dane Sonsenbacher has the latest.
The fire department responded last night to this house in the 200 block of Burnham Green Road. The woman inside, surrounded by feces and urine. Her skin literally molded to the chair. The neighbors surrounding the scene say they hadn't seen her in years. It was a hideous scene. Rescue teams had to wear hazmat suits just to enter the house.
When they found her, she was shaking. She was calling out for help and yelling in pain.
According to the Lucas County Sheriff's report, Miss Foster was so physically weak that bones in her body were breaking when EMS was attempting to carry her out. And the odor from the house could be smelled from the sidewalk.
She's a hoarder, and it got pretty bad. I didn't know how bad it got since I haven't been able to make it over there.
It seemed nobody had made it over there, except one person, a member of the church she used to attend. An elderly man named James would bring her food. He said he'd become simply accustomed to the smell.
For years I wanted to call the fire department at least to show her and prove to her that the house was a fire hazard, and I should have done it.
The Lucas County Sheriff's Department has confirmed that proper departments have been notified and an investigation is underway. From Springfield Township, Dane Sonsenbacher, WTOL 11.
So, obviously, that is just really a very sad news story. And when I came across it, it was almost in a sense of disbelief that I saw it. I mean, I was just really mortified by what was going on there. I mean, there are just so many things that are profoundly wrong with culture and society in that. And I can't address them all today, but I do want to focus on the idea of what I'm calling the loneliness epidemic. And so there is a real epidemic that we have in our world when it comes to loneliness. And I mean, the tragedy of this news story really drives that home. It helps us to see that there are societal issues that are they should be just cause of major concern for us. And the Bible speaks to that. It tells us some things about loneliness and about community, and I want to emphasize a few of those, and then I'm going to close off with a challenge today. The first thing I want to emphasize today is just the biblical truth that we are made for community. So God, when He made us, we were crafted and we were formed in many ways for a communal purpose. We see in Genesis, and early on in Genesis chapter 2, that He looks at man and He says, it's not good that man should be alone. And so He crafts for man a helper. The old King James says a helpmeet. And so, but He crafts for him a helper, and woman is that helper. And there is community that happens there, and He tells them to be fruitful and to multiply. And obviously they can't do that in isolation. And so when we're dealing with the issue of community, we've got to realize that we were created for that. And so this loneliness epidemic that we see in our culture today kind of pulls against the fabric of what we were made for. And really, in many ways, we can see this truth that we were made for community is rooted in the reality of the Trinity. Even though we don't see the word Trinity in the Bible, we as Christians espouse to the Trinity, that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God, the Lord is one. But yet there are three distinct, but yet co-eternal, co-equal personalities within the Trinity. We don't worship three gods. We worship one God. It defies human logic, I understand. But since time immemorial, before time even began, God existed in community within Himself. And that's a beautiful picture of what we were created for. And a little bit of teaser, we're going to talk about the Trinity a little bit more next week. Next week I'm going to spend lunch with CROSSROADS doing a kind of a non-review on the upcoming movie that'll be released next Friday, The Shack, which was a very popular book about 7 or 8 years ago. And so we'll be talking about that. I encourage you to tune in for that. I think it'll be helpful for you. So the first thing I want to emphasize is that we were made for community. The second thing that we need to emphasize when we're talking about the loneliness epidemic is that we are called to be neighbors. And so, now understand that doesn't mean neighbor in the sense of neighborhood or the person that lives next door to me necessarily. In fact, the sort of the quintessential passage that we have in Scripture about what it means to be a neighbor is found in Luke chapter 10, where we have the parable of the Good Samaritan that is being portrayed off the lips of Christ as He's trying to demonstrate what it means to be a neighbor. And so, the Good Samaritan teaches us and shows us that any person that is in need by biblical mandate is our neighbor. And so if you remember that story, there's a man who's been beaten up and he's been robbed. He's basically been left destitute and for dead and naked and alone along the path. And a couple of different guys, both with religious backgrounds, come by him and they pass by and they don't engage him at all. They don't try to help or meet any of his physical needs. But then a man comes by and he's a Samaritan, and Jesus picks a Samaritan on purpose on that because that would have been sort of a racial divide, a despicable person to a Jewish person. And he says the Samaritan comes by and he helps him and he takes him to an inn and he volunteers to pay for whatever is happening and whatever he needs. And Jesus asks sort of the punchline of the question at the end, of these three, who was the neighbor? And of course, everybody hearing it understands that the Samaritan himself was the neighbor. And so we need to understand that the person in need is our neighbor. And this goes hand in hand with the call God has given us to love others. That's why we talk about love God, love others, serve the world here at Crossroads, because, and that's just not a cute slogan we made up. It's rooted in the imperatives of Scripture. God has commanded us to do that. And so if we're going to combat the loneliness epidemic that's all around us, part of what we need to embrace is the call to be good neighbors. And I want you to think about that. I mean, our culture has transitioned and changed in so many ways. And I was looking at statistics this morning on loneliness, and they were citing the fact that people are more engaged socially through social network, but yet there seem to be indications that the internal loneliness that is inside of people is expressed in higher rates than it has been in previous generations. And so what we're seeing is that our need for connection is beyond a digital need. We need somebody who can go to lunch with us, who can throw a frisbee with us, who can take a walk in the park with us. We need those kinds of relationships. And while digital relationships can be helpful to lead to those kind of things, they're not ample replacements for them. We need more than that in our day and age, and we need to be mindful of that. And so, look, you ask somebody, how many friends do you have? And they say, well, I've got 2,000 friends on Facebook. Well, here's the deal, guys. When I ask you how many friends you have, I'm not asking you how many friends you have on Facebook, because half the people I'm friends, and my wife says that I need to purge my face. I won't tell you what she calls me. She calls me a bad name. But basically she accuses me of being promiscuous on social media. Not that I'm not promiscuous in that way, but that I will befriend people who I don't even know who they are. I've got people who are friends with me in digital media who are from literally all over the globe, because of mission trips and stuff I've been on. And many times I don't remember their names or their faces, but they remember me. And so I'll befriend them. My wife's not like that. She's more selective, and you can tell she chose me as her husband. But, I can tell there's a lag because nobody gave us a snide comment to that. But we need to remember that we are called to be neighbors, and this is an expression of how we love each other in this loneliness epidemic. The third thing I want to indicate that I want to emphasize, so number one, for those who are just tuning in, we were made for community. Number two, we are called to be neighbors. Number three, isolation often indicates hurt. Okay? Now, before we get too much into this, let's be careful that we don't confuse isolation with just an expression of personality, okay? There are multiple kinds of people who are tuned in right now, who are watching. Some of you by nature are just extroverted. I'm that way. I mean, I love people. I like to talk to people. I'm loud. You don't have to look for me in a crowd. You can just close your eyes and listen for me. I'm extroverted. There are some people who are naturally introverted, and so they don't. For them, many times public settings can be stressful, and so that need for quiet and alone for them is more of an expression of their personality type than it is necessarily of any type of hurt in their life. Okay, and so there are extroverts and there are introverts, and then my wife and Shannon Brown have coined a term called ambivert. So ambiverts are people who, in many ways, prefer to be introverted, but they're adept enough where they can be extroverted when they need to be. They kind of straddle those two different worlds, and there are people that are like that as well. And so when I'm talking about isolation, I'm not talking about an expression of your personality type, okay? What I'm talking about are people who isolate themselves in an unhealthy way from community, from culture, because honestly, this is indicating some kind of internal hurt in their past, maybe some kind of abuse or some kind of rejection or something that has happened to them, or maybe even something that they did that they're coping with in an unhealthy way, that is shutting them down and that's creating loneliness inside of them. Okay, hurt drives us to isolation, and this is a spiral of death, because isolation almost never fosters healing for us. And so when we look at the loneliness epidemic that is around us and this tragic story about this lady we saw earlier, and we can see that people isolate themselves from the rest of the world, and they just get worse and worse and worse. And of course, I did some other reading. I don't think it was in the particular news story I showed you. They ultimately wound up decapitating. They ultimately wound up, what do they call it when they cut off her leg for medical reasons? I can't remember the term. Oh, that's going to drive me crazy. Somebody shout out the term. What do you call it when you cut off your arm for medical reasons? They cut off her leg. I mean, her bones were breaking when they were moving her. Obviously, she had other health issues that were involved there beyond the loneliness. Just recently, amputate. Thank you, Kinsley. Not decapitate, amputate. I recently sidled up alongside of a friend and kind of, putting my arm around their shoulder. And this person, I had noticed some isolation in them, and that they were sort of isolating themselves. And I just said to this individual, I said, "Are you mad at me?" And I was pretty confident they weren't mad at me, though they could have been. But I said, "Are you mad at me?" And I was just trying to create a conversation. And kind of sheepishly, they said no. And I said, "Well, I never see you." And the person just said to me in a very frank and honest way, and almost a whisper, they said, "I'm just dealing with some issues right now." And, I was able to just say to them, "Well, I'm here for you. Do you want to talk about it?" Number one. And the answer was no. And if you do change your mind and you want to talk about it, then I would love to discuss that with you. And then, just to help them to understand that, for us as believers, there are people that come along. So I wanted that person to feel loved in that moment. I wanted them to understand somebody was coming alongside of them and loving them. And that's what people need in our world today. They need somebody to come alongside of them and love them. And understand this, people that are hurting very seldom will initiate that, which is a burden on the rest of us, because there are a lot of hurting people, and it can be very draining to engage in those conversations, but we need to, because it's the right thing to do. We need to be careful. Healing for them, it doesn't often mean that we drag them out of isolation immediately, but it means that we meet them at the point of their loneliness and we bring the gospel with us. I love the guy in the video. They didn't show him on the video, but his name was James. This man who had brought meals to this lady, and he ultimately called EMS services, and he brought meals to her so regularly that the odors and just the unsanitary nature of where they found this lady, they didn't revolt him. He had almost grown accustomed to it because he was so in that environment so regularly. And so remember, when it comes to loneliness and hurt, that isolation often indicates hurt. And then the last thing I want to emphasize today is that relationships in their healthiest expression are always sources of joy. Okay. Now for those who have been in abusive relationships or unhealthy relationships, this is going to seem incredibly counterintuitive to you, because for you, relationships have been sources of pain. But understand, that's a reflection of broken and sinful and wrong relationships. Healthy relationships, as God intends for them to be, are sources of joy. And we see that really, again, going back to the Trinity. I mean, the Father finds joy in the Son. The Son finds joy in the Spirit. The Spirit finds joy in the Father. And I keep going on and on. You've got all of those relationships where there is a joyful expression there. And so when our relationships are healthy, they should be sources of joy for us. And when they're not healthy, or maybe it's better to reverse engineer that, when they're not joyful, there's some level of unhealth there, and we need to work on that. Whether it's with a spouse or a kid or a neighbor or a friend or a pastor or whomever it may be, a coworker, we need to work on that because we want our relationships to be healthy. And where there are healthy relationships, there will be joy that comes with that. Okay, so I want to end today by challenging you to do something about the loneliness, because we do live in a world where there is a loneliness epidemic. And so here's my challenge to all of you guys that are watching right now. You know, the few of you guys that are online, you're watching, the many of you that will watch this after it's posted and watch it later on. I want to challenge you to get to know your neighbors. Now, understand, I just said your neighbor isn't necessarily the person that physically lives next to you, okay? But I want to challenge you to get to know your physical neighbors, okay? Gone are the days of sort of neighborhood block parties. Those days are gone. We've got electric garage door openers. I mean, we hit it before we're even in the driveway. It opens up, we pull in, it closes. If we see our neighbor, it's because they want to borrow a tool, right? And so we don't see our neighbors anymore. And so I want to challenge you, and I'm challenging myself because I've got some brand new neighbors that I haven't met yet. Every person that shares a property line with you, I want you to meet them, okay? And if you haven't seen them in more than 3 or 4 months, I want you to go and to check on them, okay? You never know when you've got a person that is struggling with loneliness that is right next door to you. And you've thought about it. You've thought about it a bunch of times, just like that girl in that video. She says, I wish I'd have checked on her. And don't be that person, right? Don't be that person who hasn't checked on somebody. Check on people. See how they're doing. You know, invite them over for coffee. Invite them to church, okay? But then not just everybody that shares a property line with you. I want you to look to your right and to your left up and down your street. And at least 3 doors to your right, 3 doors to your left, okay? So broaden that circle. Get to know people that live in your immediate vicinity. First of all, you can bear a good Christian witness in that setting, but you never know what's going on there. So reach out to those people, okay? And you know, invite them into your life, invite them into your home, invite them to come to church with you, okay? Hey, listen, we got, speaking of inviting, we've got some great things going on here at Crossroads. This weekend is our annual women's retreat. Their theme this year is retreat and rest. And so we actually have a retreat where we have a nap time planned for adult women. And I can't tell you how jacked up they are about that. And so it's going to be a great time. Ladies, I hope that you'll be a part of that. If you have not signed up yet, there is still time for us to squeeze in a few more folks. All you have to do is go on down the road and to CrossRoadsEtown.com, and you can register there. I love what Amy Power says. She's in the middle of a remodel. She's going to do an open house when her kitchen is done, and we're hoping it's done really soon because it's been dragging on. But yeah, that's a great idea. You know, I invite them over when you open the pool. I mean, it's kind of springtime-ish. I know it could still be winter here, but it's kind of springtime. People are outside. Go meet them, right? Dawn Wheeler's really excited about nap time. Yeah, you're not the only one, Dawn. I've heard that from so many people. So women's retreat is this weekend. There's still time for you to sign up for that. Always, if you don't have church home, we want to invite you to come worship with us at Crossroads, where we worship together every Sunday at 10:30. I think it's a very life-giving experience, and I think it will feed your soul. You can find sermons and information about our church online at CrossRoadsEtown.com. Please like us on Twitter at CrossRoadsEtown, at Rob_Sumrall, and let us know things that are going on. All right. Dinner at Mama Wheeler's following the Shaq movie viewing. Okay, Mama Wheeler, you need to turn in. I'm going to tune in. I want you to tune in next Thursday because I'm going to, you don't want to miss this. I'm just going to tell you right now, for reasons that I will expound next week, I am not a fan of the shack. Okay? So I hope you'll come with an open mind. I'm not speaking from ignorance. I've read it. I've studied it. And so I hope that you'll come next week, Thursday. I think maybe I might change your mind. We'll see. We'll see, Mama Wheeler. Maybe I won't change your mind. I'll still like you anyway. I can't believe you tune in. So, hey, listen. As always, I'm Rob Summerall, and I've had a blast sharing lunch with you today. Thank you for tuning in. Wherever you are, I hope you have a great week. We will see you next week. God bless.